It's here. It's Winter 4-State Challenge Week here, and I'm so stoked. I have a ton of questions I'm going to be answering. Things like what kind of gear that I'm going to be bringing for the 4-State, and what's the mileage for it, and with Viking's back problems, is he going to be able to make it? You have some other questions like, do you have to continue to rebuy Guthook's app each year after you pay for it the first time? And why do I keep on doing videos in hotel rooms? All of this and more, so stick around. What's happening, hikers? Bigfoot here. Welcome back to my channel. I have got a jam-packed Q&A session in store for you today. It's going to be focusing a lot on the Winter 4-State Challenge that we're doing here at the end of the week. But before I get into questions, we've been doing the Million Step Challenge updates that we started back on January 1st and goes through the end of March, first quarter. We have 7 more people that finished their Million Step Challenge here this week, and we haven't even hit the halfway point. Unlike most weeks, I'm not going to go through the top 10 leaderboard because we're typically having the same steppers each and every week that are going out there and stepping anywhere between 140,000 to like 240,000 steps a week. Absolutely insane. I want to focus on the folks that accomplished the feat of 1,000,000 steps here this week. So first up is C.S. Lee. C.S. Lee commented on our Q&A here last week that he just hit his 1,000,000 steps. I think it was sometime around Friday morning. And then on Sunday, Jason Lowe hit his 1,000,000 steps. Me and Jason actually have been going back and forth on Garmin with step challenges each and every week with about another couple dozen folks, and he has just been slaying it. And then on Monday this week, both Harry Seifert and Larry Elliott crossed the 1,000,000 step mark. And then on Tuesday the 12th, we had 3 more people cross the 1,000,000 mark. First one is Clay Van Eyck, and then Freddie VDM, which Freddie, huge props. He's the one that created the spreadsheet and has helped with all the tracking and a lot of things on the Facebook group that I created for this. And then at about 10:30 that night, I finally crossed the 1,000,000 step mark. My goal was to be able to do it by Valentine's Day, which was 45 days, and I was able to do it a day early. So congratulations to the 7 folks that hit their 1,000,000 steps here this week and the dozen that have so far passed this 1,000,000 step mark. All right, so switching gears to the 4-State Challenge, let's talk about weather. Leading up to the time that we're going to start this thing, the weather has looked very favorable for us all the way until about 3 days ago. It has since changed, and we are going to be experiencing winter conditions. Who'd have thunk? It's winter, right? But it's kind of funny. It's interesting because originally we were looking at temps of hiking somewhere in the mid-50s, even maybe touch 60. I mean, like perfect temperatures for what I would consider spring and fall conditions. Even in the summer, like those are perfect conditions when it's sunny and it's somewhere in the 60s, but it's since changed and it's dropped dramatically. There must be a low front that's coming in, and we are going to be starting off seeing temperatures somewhere in the 30s to mid to low 20s. So we're starting off actually in the evening. We want to hike the overnight, and then by the time we get to the rocky part of Maryland, we want to be able to have daylight for that. We are going to see very cold temperatures. It's literally going from 70 degrees as a high on Thursday down to low of about 23 on Friday. So it's a pretty drastic change from when I fly in to what we're actually going to see when we get on the trail. And then on Saturday, it's going to snow now. And the high is about 36 and the low is somewhere in the low 20s again. We are going to be doing this thing in the winter and it's going to feel like winter. But that's the reason why it is the Winter 4-State Challenge. So getting into the first question, for the Winter 4-State Challenge, what's the total mileage for 2018? Mileage is going to be about 43.4 miles here this year. And we're going to have to hike up to the Virginia and cross the Virginia state line from West Virginia. And then when we cross the Mason-Dixon line, we have to walk about a half a mile back. So we're adding somewhere around about a mile to the total hike. So we're probably going to be somewhere in that 44.5-mile range, all said and done with. How much gear are you going to bring during the challenge? Will it just be minimal stuff? What I decided to do is to bring everything that I would be bringing if I was actually through hiking the Appalachian Trail. So I'm going to bring my tent, I'm going to bring my sleeping pad, my sleeping bag, I'm going to bring all of the things that you typically see in my gear list when I do some of these long through hikes. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to experience this like I would if I was through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I don't really want to do this with minimal stuff. Plus, just in the event that something happens, it is winter, and we have to set up camp or something like that. You know, we have that just in emergency cases. Are you or Viking planning to take rain mitts or gloves on the 4-State Challenge? What do you typically use for wintertime hiking hand covering? For this adventure, I'm going to be bringing a lightweight fleece glove for the times I'm actually hiking when I'm on the trail. I'll also pair that up with a waterproof shell glove. I'll be using the Z-Packs rain mitts for that. And then I'll typically have like a glove for in camp. What I'll be bringing is a heavier glove, and this is for when I'm not being as active and I need a little more insulation in my glove to be able to keep my hands warm. You probably want to have something waterproof. That's typically what I use for something like this. Now, I just got back from a backpacking trip at the end of December. I'll link the video up here of the gear that I brought on my winter backpacking trip, which I saw temperatures going down to about 7, but I'd be comfortable with this setup going below 0. I followed Early Riser, Black Appalachian, and Dan Haley last year for their entire AT hikes. Plan on following Ibtat and Grumpy this year so far. Listening Between the Blazes audio, and I thought he was having back trouble. Is he still going to be hiking for the 4-state challenge? So I spoke to Viking here this last weekend and about some of the concerns maybe that he might be having with his back, and he is all ready to go. He is having some minor issues with it, but nothing that's going to be taking him off the trail, so he is stoked, and we'll be doing this thing together. Speaking of together, this next question, are you and Viking planning on staying together for the entire 4-state challenge? Yes, we are planning on staying together the entire time. That's barring something like crazy happening out there on the trail, but that's what the plan is, staying together, and we're also going to vlog this thing. Bigfoot lurks around the Maryland area of the AT. I hope you bring some jack links. Good point. How about a how-to on trekking poles, types of locking mechanisms, pull materials, needs for baskets and rubber tips, replacement parts such as tips, etc. So actually one of my favorite videos I've done on this channel is a how-to on trekking pole techniques. What are the techniques of how to hold them? What are the techniques of how to use them? I'll link the video above here. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that video. If you haven't checked it out yet, I strongly encourage you to check it out. In terms of the other pieces of talking about the specifics of trekking poles, locking mechanisms, pull materials, baskets, I think that's a great question and it would be a great video. I'm actually going to be talking specifically about carbon fiber poles and why I hate them. I'll be doing that here in the next week of the channel, and I'll kind of pair that up with my review of the carbon and cork trekking poles from Knock Outdoors, so stay tuned for that. Can you explain, in your JMT video, you said you counted going up in elevation, not miles. Something like that. Can you please expand on this? I don't understand what you meant. Also, love your videos. I love how personable you are, and your videos are very informative. Perfect. So when I'm out there and I'm hiking, whether it is a section hike or a long distance through hike, when I'm ascending up mountains or ascending period, I am looking at elevation. So let's just say that I need to climb up to 10,000 feet and I'm at 9,100 feet. I have 900 feet of elevation I need to climb. How I assess that as I continue to ascend is looking at my altitude on my watch and determining how much further that I have left based on the altitude that I'm at. So if I'm at 9,600 feet, I have 400 more feet of elevation left to climb. The reason why I look at altitude and not mileage is it tells me the difficulty level that I have left. I stopped doing this earlier in my Appalachian Trail through hike because it was hard to determine the difficulty level that I had left when I was just looking at mileage. When I started really focusing on the altitude piece, how much elevation I had left, it was rare that I had a false summit. I knew exactly the altitude that I was at and what I had left to climb. You hear all the time about people on the Appalachian Trail climbing up a mountain and having a false summit. That happened to me a lot in the very beginning, but once I started doing this, it never happened. I knew exactly how much elevation I had left to climb. I do this just to help my mind out, and since I've been doing it, it's made it so much easier. But I really look at elevation on my ascents. I'm a hammock camper and backpacker. Is it out of the question for the GMT because of the lack of trees at altitude? I'm looking at doing it in a few years, so I may have to buy a tent and go to the ground. Thoughts? So first off, when I was on the JMT, I didn't see one hammocker the entire time, and I was on the trail for about 12 or 13 days. Now, that does not mean that people don't do it. I've had people comment in different posts saying that they have brought a hammock out on the JMT. You're limited to certain areas of which that you can camp, that you have trees to be able to set up your hammock. It's not like the Appalachian Trail where you literally can pitch your hammock wherever you please. So it's possible to bring a hammock, but you limit many of the places of which you can stay. Now, I'm not a hammock guy, but if I was, I don't like the idea of bringing a hammock just because I personally don't like to have to arrange my entire trip around areas of which I can only camp in just because of my setup. So it's really up to you, but you are going to be severely limited of where you can pitch. And of course, you're not going to be able to stay very high, but you're going to be hitting some passes where you might be above tree line with no places to set up your hammock for maybe 15 miles. So although you'll be limited, it's doable. Shooting to hike the JMT in 2 years when I'm 50, how physically challenging is the JMT and what kind of shape do I need to be in? I'm in decent shape right now and don't think I'd have a problem, but one thing, I've never hiked a 20-mile day. I live in Ohio and this is where I like to hike most of the time, mostly in southern Ohio where the terrain is a lot more steep and downs over and over. I've hiked 14 miles a couple of years ago when I was just starting to get into backpacking with a pack weighing over 40 pounds, never again. In the last year, I've been working on getting more UL gear items, and I'm pretty sure that I'm set now. Base weight is right around 10 pounds. Can I do it? In terms of the physical challenge, you're going to be climbing up passes that's going to reach up to 13,000 and some odd feet on Forester, and then of course Mount Whitney, which is 14,505 feet. So the altitude piece is going to play a big role on it. Obviously the air is thinner up there and it makes it more challenging to be able to be active in those sorts of altitudes. But with the JMT, you are going to be gradually going up these mountain passes. You are not going straight up and straight down like you do the Appalachian Trail. Now there are some mountain passes that definitely are difficult in terms of the switchbacks. All of them have switchbacks, which is great. But with the switchbacks and how steep they are, it's going to be challenging. You're going to have to stop and rest and breathe and that sort of thing. But when I compare the challenge to the Appalachian Trail that I did back in 2016, the AT was a lot more challenging. And that's just because the frequency of how often you actually climbed up the mountains and of course how steep the mountains were. The Appalachian Trail was a lot steeper than the JMT. But in terms of the challenge, I think that you can do it. I think a lot of folks can be able to hike the JMT as long as they can handle the altitude piece. If you are doing or able to do 20-mile days right now, you should be able to do 12, 13, 14-mile days on the JMT and in many of the parts of the JMT. And a lot of folks are going to be doing the JMT in the period of 3 to 4 weeks. If you're trying to do this thing in 10 to 14 days, you're going to have to pull a lot of 20-mile days and it's going to be a lot more challenging. But if you can be like most folks and have somewhere around that 3 or so weeks to be able to do the JMT, you'll be able to average 10-mile days, take some zeros, and have a great time. So yes, I definitely think you're going to be able to do it. Notice you do a lot of videos from hotel rooms. Is that because of your job or do you just go on backpacking trips a lot? So although I do go on backpacking trips quite a bit, I travel a lot for work. Typically every quarter I'm traveling somewhere around or staying in a hotel room about 10 nights a quarter, which is not too bad, but this quarter it's about double that because of what's going on with work. So I'm going to actually be traveling and staying in a hotel about 20 nights. So, somewhere around 7 days each month. Now, when I spend time in hotel rooms, I try to knock out videos. It's a great time for me to be able to do it. So you'll see that a lot in the channel and as we progress here this year. And then to our last question, if you get the Guthook app for the AT, does it change to match each year or would you have to continue to rebuy the app? So I purchased Guthook's app on my AT 2016 through hike and I have not had to repurchase Guthook's app each year. I just looked up the section of the trail that I'm going to be doing here at the end of the week with the Winter 4-State Challenge, and I have access to the app and all the different maps. The answer to that question is no, you don't have to rebuy it. You continue to get it. I have never heard anybody having to rebuy it. Well, that about wraps up everything here for the questions this week and the 4-State Challenge. I will be posting pictures and other things on my Instagram page and Facebook. Make sure you follow me on that. I'll link them below here on the 4-State Challenge. Of course, if you're a patron of mine, you can track me on my GPS link during the entire 4-State Challenge and every single adventure that I'll be going on. If you're not a patron of mine, you want to come on over, check it out. I'll also link Patreon below. All the money that I make on Patreon goes right back to the channel, whether it's on our monthly gear giveaways or it's upgrading my audio and video equipment or it's on trips like this. So stay tuned for the big week that we have here doing the 4-State Challenge with Viking. Subscribe to my channel so that you can follow Bigfoot.